Aiken was transferred to Ogden City Jail, where further interrogations took place. Aiken never directly confessed and pled not guilty at his trial, which took place in July of 2019, a little less than a year later. At trial, the state argued that Aiken told police homeless people are a problem. After 2 days of testimony and 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Aiken guilty.
Requiem, actual strike team is on the ground.
Let's get moving, people. Recon the site and eliminate all hostiles.
He will also serve a concurrent prison term of up to 5 years for possessing a gun as a restricted use.
Hunted enemy down.
November 6, 2020.
Nazi experiments, dimensional gateways, the undead. Shit, it must be Christmas. We should buy lottery tickets.
Sources say this place is ground zero. What's happening around the world right now? It all started here. Team, find a way in.
Had that coming. Who wants some?
Hello and welcome back to my channel, and we are still covering the Again case. And today we're going over the Again affidavit, and we are going to discuss what we think about it, what we think about the evidence outlined in it, and what we think happened, because we're really not going to get any actual confession from Letitia Stout, in my opinion. Today we're covering the stories of Letitia Stout. In doing so, we're also going to cover what we do know about her movements the day that she disappeared and the days following. Before we get started, I want to have a word from our sponsor, and our sponsor for this video is Ana Luisa Jewelry. Ana Luisa has been a sponsor of mine for a while. Once again, I have a few trusted sponsors that I've used for quite a long time, and Ana Luisa is one of them. They understand that a lot of times we should take sponsors on this channel in order to keep this channel going. Now let's get started on the video. So first, I want to talk about when Letitia picked up her husband and Ganna's father, Al, from the airport on the morning of January 28th, which was the day after Ganna disappeared, and allegedly Letitia murdered him. So I'm on page 8 of the affidavit, and it's paragraph 56. It says, Mr. Stout spent the night in Denver on January 25th, 2020, and flew out of Denver International Airport on January 26th, 2020. Investigators were able to corroborate he traveled to Dallas, Texas, and also to Oklahoma based on his flight records. On the morning of January 28th, 2020, Letitia rented a 2019 Kia Rio from Avis Rent-A-Car in Colorado Springs. Letitia picked Mr. Stout up at the Colorado Springs airport at about 8:50 a.m. on January 28th, and this was basically right after she rented the Kia. Letitia and Al drove back to their house from the airport in the rented Kia. Now, obviously, it's suspicious why people feel the need to rent a car when her Volkswagen Tiguan had no issues. She had been driving it. It was not broken down. There was no mechanical issues. But she decided to rent a car to pick up Al from the airport in Colorado Springs. In paragraph 57, it says the timing of the rental of the Kia is suspicious, and combined with forensic evidence later obtained from the Tiguan and discussed below, tends to place additional importance on why Letitia felt compelled to rent a vehicle that morning. Investigators located no evidence that the Tiguan was not mechanically functioning, or noted any reason why it could not have been physically driven. In fact, the Tiguan remained parked in the Colorado Springs Airport short-term parking lot until approximately 7 p.m. on January 28th. Now, apparently, Letitia had told Al that she rented the car because she was concerned about putting mileage on her Tiguan lease, which would justify the vehicle rental. It's noted, however, that during the time of the Kia rental, Letitia only put about 71 miles on the vehicle. It's not clear whether they mean she put 71 miles on the Kia 71 miles on her Tiguan. Well, what's really suspicious is she didn't tell Al where her Tiguan was. I'm not sure if he asked or if she just don't mention it, but he was at the airport, and when Al was questioned by investigators, he said he thought it was parked at a school the whole time. Between investigators and Mr. Stout, a limited search for the Tiguan was conducted and produced negative results. So basically, once they realized she was car, they looked for her car, but they couldn't find it. And then it was later discovered that she'd left the car at the airport, but then moved the car at 7 p.m. on January 28th. But the Kia Rio wasn't returned to the Avis rent-a-car place until the next morning, January 29th. So she rents this car, picks up Al, they go home. At some point, she goes back for her Tiguan, drives it someplace else, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then the next morning, she returns the Kia. She had also changed her story at one point and told her husband that she rented this car because she was searching for Gannon, and she felt it would be more likely that they could find Gannon if he was like walking around town and they were driving around looking for him. It would be more likely that they could find him if they weren't driving a vehicle that he recognized, because if he saw her car looking for him, he was gone in time. Now, the Volkswagen Tiguan is obviously important to investigators because they believe that this was the vehicle used to transport the remains of Gannon from the South residence to a location where Gannon's body was dumped. And the definitive locations of this vehicle are unknown to investigators during the time period of the evening of January 28th and the morning of January 29th. Because of that, the rental car, they don't know where the Tiguan was because she was clearly trying to hide something. The investigators believe that she killed him on the 27th and then dumped his body on the evening of the 28th. They seized the Tiguan from her on January 29th, 2020, and she also had a scheduled interview with investigators on January 29th, 2020, which is when they ended up taking the vehicle from her. She was supposed to show up at 10:30 for this interview, but she didn't get there until noon. And when she showed up, she was driving her Volkswagen, but it was still damp, as if she had just gone through a car wash. And in fact, they had video footage of a car matching the description of her vehicle going through a nearby car wash right before she was supposed to be at the police station. They believe that this was because the station had to clean the vehicle, and there was likely visible blood on the rear end based on the below-luminol reaction. So they took the car from her when she finally did show up, and they towed it to the EPSO evidence facility. On or about February 1st, 2020, the FBI evidence response team conducted a search of the vehicle in Tiguan. In summary, the forensic portion of the search revealed possible traces of blood on the rear of the vehicle, the passenger seat, front passenger seat, and an area near the glove box based on luminol blood-stained region tests. Swabs from the trunk area were sent to the Metro Crime Laboratory for further analysis. These results revealed that a DNA profile could not be developed, and that swab from the trunk was negative for the presumptive presence of blood. So essentially, they found what they think is blood on the rear of the vehicle, but they did not find blood in the trunk. Several areas of the Tiguan reacted to luminol. Specifically, the search team found evidence of suspected blood on the rear bumper and the step plate of the rear bumper. The location of this blood is significant because this vehicle was backed into the garage at Letitia's residence the day of Gannon's murder. The search of this residence is discussed below, but it is noted that evidence of Gannon's blood based on DNA profile was located on the floor of the garage, consistent with where the rear end of the Tiguan would have been. And we talked about this in the first video on Gannon's, the one that we just made, part one of this, I should say. We talked about how Gannon's blood was found on the floor of the garage, and this is the area that would have been located at the back of Letitia's vehicle, which had been backed into the garage. Inside the Tiguan, a receipt from a dollar store was located, time-stamped January 27, 2020, and documented the purchase of trash bags, baking soda, vinegar, and the items that were in paragraph 74. There's other things on this dollar store receipt, baby oil, baby lotion, hot rounds, bubble gum. The investigators don't believe that these other items had anything to do with Letitia's her crime scene, and they have no investigative value at this point, but this would have been the purchase that Harley made on Monday, January 27th, after she got home from work and took Lana over to the house so that Letitia could allegedly clean up the mess that she had made when she killed her stepson. This is when they also found the parking receipt from the Colorado Springs airport, which let them know where Letitia's car had been for a period of the time that they didn't know where it was. Now, on January 29, 2020, Letitia returned the rented Kia at approximately 9 a.m., and she was picked up by someone driving the white Jetta. Investigators were unable to confirm that Harley was driving the Jetta, but it is her primary vehicle, and her cell phone information showed that she was in the area at that time, so it's very likely that Harley was the one who picked up Letitia from the rental car place when she returned the Jetta. Once they had the Tiguan in their custody, they were able to take some of the raw data from the Tiguan's computer, and thus they were able to piece together some of the locations that she may have been on the evening of January 28th, 2020. And one of these locations was the area of Highway 105 South Perry Park Road in Douglas County, Colorado, where particle board was discovered with Gannon's blood on it. Because of this information, so once they got that information from the car, they went there, they found the particle board. They believed that Letitia killed Gannon, took his body, and dumped it there for a temporary time. The affidavit also says something else about Harley's location on the evening of January 28, 2020. So her cell phone was connected to the tower that would have serviced the Stout residence, which was approximately 30 miles away from Letitia's suspected location. So investigators don't believe that Harley was with Letitia when Letitia disposed of Gannon's body. However, at approximately 10:26 p.m., Harley's cell phone left the Stout residence and went to the area of Powers and Fairfree, where investigators suspect she picked Letitia up. And this is going to be a question that I have. How much was Harley aware of when it came to what not to take Gannon? Because Letitia would have driven her own Volkswagen Tiguan out to that area where she would have dumped Gannon's body. But why would Harley have to pick her up? Because Letitia left her vehicle in some random parking lot out there and wanted Harley to pick her up. Because why? Because most likely Letitia knew that there was going to be some kind of investigation, and she didn't want her car at the house when the forensics and crime scene teams showed up. So we've got Gannon's murder happening sometime on the 27th. On the 28th, Letitia picks up Al. She drives out to this area in Douglas County, allegedly dumping Gannon's body. And she has Harley pick her up. She leaves her car in some random parking lot where the police can't find it. And they drive back home. The next morning is when she's supposed to have her interview with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. She's supposed to get there at 10:30. She's late with her car that she had left in that parking lot, but it's been freshly washed. So it says in paragraph 82, as mentioned above, Letitia voluntarily came to the EPSO for an interview with investigators, but only after she was evasive and avoided speaking with investigators. Audio and video recorded, and the below information includes her own statements as well as an investigation geared towards corroborating those statements. In general, her statements are reasonably categorized as untruthful, incomplete, and misleading. So remember, in that interview that Letitia had, the only one that we have from her back to the camera, she says that the police treated her and her daughter horribly. They wouldn't get them food, they wouldn't get them water, they wouldn't let them talk to a lawyer, they threatened them, all of these accusations. And here we can see that her interview was in fact recorded, and she was offered food, and she was offered water, and she was treated like, you know, a normal suspect should be treated, who has rights. Of interest, Letitia brought some notebook paper with her that contained notes that she'd written down. During the interview, she referred to these pieces of paper and asked investigators if she could just read off her notes. Investigators were not able to seize these documents. I have conducted hundreds of interviews of subjects, victims, and witnesses. It is extremely rare for an individual to bring notes to an interview. See, Letitia wasn't really worried about looking suspicious, because bringing notes to an interview certainly looks suspicious. Like, if you know what happened, especially if it just happened a couple of days ago or the day before, you don't need to refer to your notes. It's still pretty fresh in your memory. The fact that she had to write down notes in order to keep track of her lies and her statements that she previously made says that she didn't know her own story well enough to keep track of it while in a police interview, and she didn't want to mess up and say the wrong thing or contradict herself. She would rather look suspicious bringing notes to read off of in a police interview than to say something to contradict herself where they could prove she had lied and contradicted herself. But really, having those notes with her does not prevent her from lying and contradicting herself and incriminating herself. So her initial story when police officers arrived on the 27th was that Gannon was missing. He'd gone to a friend's house and he was missing. He didn't come home. She didn't know where he was. When she has her interview on the 29th, she completely departs from the story and comes up with just a random, absolutely unbelievable story. She claims that when she and Gannon got back on Monday afternoon, before Lana got home from school, they went in the house, and there was a man waiting there for her. A man named Eduardo. She had met Eduardo on Sunday. Janet had dropped a candle on the carpet and burned the carpet. So she was driving around the neighborhood where some residential
I got a window for Chopper Exfil strike team. Take it if we need to regroup.
Crews were like working on the house and asked this Hispanic male named Eduardo if he could come to her house and fix the carpet. She can't describe this person. She says he's Hispanic and he has brown hair and brown eyes. She doesn't know how tall he is, how much he weighs, any distinguishing features about him. She gave the most basic description of this person she could ever give. So when he said he would do it and he would fix the carpet, she then told him she was going to go out and run errands the next day and gave him her garage door code so he could go in and fix the carpet while she was out. What kind of person drives around a neighborhood, finds a stranger, says, here's my garage code, go into my house tomorrow when I'm not home, fix the carpet? So here's her actual statement. She arrived home after 2 stops at Highway, hours where nobody knew where she was because the phone wasn't with her. She disarmed her security system and then went into the basement. She said that Eduardo was in the basement, attacked her, and pointed a gun at her. She said that Eduardo held her at gunpoint, but he allowed her to go upstairs to greet her stepdaughter Lana when she came home from school. Holding her hostage, but then when Lana comes home from school, he allowed Letitia to go upstairs without him, leaving him in the basement, and tell Lana to go outside and play. And then she returns to the basement of her own free will. She doesn't run outside and scream for any one of the 10 to 15 neighbors around her. She doesn't tell Lana to go to the neighbor's house and call the police, tell them to come here. She doesn't call the police herself. She doesn't run out screaming, there's a man in my basement with a gun. She sends Lana out like nothing's wrong, and then goes back down to the basement where her attackers waiting. So then Letitia returns to the basement where she claims this man, Eduardo, raped her for an hour between 3:30 and 4:30. During this period, she believes that she had hit her head and may have blacked out. Now remember, she goes to the police station on the 29th. They're obviously going to look at her head. She hit her head blacked out. No injury.
No longer available.
Letitia also said that during the attack, Gannon jumped on Eduardo's back and that Eduardo was able to throw Gannon off his back and across the room. After Eduardo was finished, he had the gun held to Gannon and then handed a suitcase. Letitia provided him with a brown suitcase and a cardboard box. Eduardo attempted to assault her again, so she hit her head and blacked out. Letitia stated she tried to fight Eduardo off but was unsuccessful. The person writing the affidavit writes, I know from training and experience that if an individual holds another person at gunpoint, he or she would likely not allow the person to have the opportunity for escape, as Letitia described being allowed to leave her stepdaughter upstairs before returning to the basement. Most crucially, if Letitia's story was accurate, any reasonable person would have immediately called 911 and reported this home invasion, rape, and kidnapping of their child. Letitia called law enforcement hours later and did not report the alleged rape until approximately 2 days later. Of even more significance, Letitia said she cleaned up the area where this alleged attack had happened. She straightened up signs of disturbances in Gannon's room and cleaned up the utility room. Investigators recovered cleaning supplies such as carpet brushes, which contained suspected carpet fibers. Now, as bizarre, crazy, and unbelievable as this story sounds, the investigators didn't just write it off immediately. They obviously made an effort to investigate the alleged attack, to corroborate or not corroborate Letitia's story. For example, investigators reviewed video footage from a neighborhood security camera that captured the exterior of the South residence from the day of Gannon's murder and did not observe a Hispanic male entering the house. Investigators did, however, observe Lana arrive home on the school bus at about, 3:11, observed her enter the residence, and observed her riding her bike on or about 3:30. Furthermore, Letitia was offered to have a nurse perform an exam on her, a rape kit, and she did not want to do the exam. So she didn't want to give the investigators evidence that would help them find whoever was who attacked her. And there's a lot more that doesn't add up in this story. The time period she was allegedly being attacked was between 3:30 and 4:30. This whole hour she claims she was in the basement with Eduardo. He didn't let her go, and he was attacking her, and Gannon was trying to save her, and, this makes me even more sick because she killed him. And then she makes up this story about somebody attacking her, and in the story, Gannon tries to save her. It's sick. It's narcissistic. It's disgusting. She and then concocts the story about how she's being attacked and Gannon trying to be a hero and save her. So in the time period of the alleged assault between 3:30 and 4:30, she used her phone quite a bit. She used a phone call and she sent several texts to Al and her daughter Carly. The time stamps of these texts are 3:41, 3:42, 3:43, 3:44, 3:45, 4:11, 4:19, and 4:20. Additionally, during this hour, the back door of the house was opened and closed a total of 10 times. The upstairs back door. While she was being attacked in the basement, who was going in and out of the house 10 times while she was being attacked in the basement? There was more activity in the basement than usual that day, however. The average amount of times the motion sensor would be triggered in the basement was usually between 3 and 4, but that day, the 27th, it was 10.3, and this can most likely be explained by T running up and down the stairs. Wait, you can see his bedroom in the basement. If that was a scene of whatever happened, or a scene of something that happened where there was a lot of blood she had to clean up, she would have most likely had to have gone upstairs, cleaning supplies, more rags, brushes, things like that, and downstairs. And she would also be taking things out of the basement, such as bedding, a body, any incriminating evidence left behind. And during this evidence, they directly asked her, did you kill Gannon? And she denied having done so. But then, when they requested for more information, she said she wanted to leave, and then they took her cell phone from her, and then she started freaking out and shoving Kleenexes and tissues down her pants. She said she was having shortness of breath and chest pains. So they called paramedics. I mean, obviously, they're going to provide medical attention to this woman who's having a panic attack, and the paramedics come and they take her to the hospital. She had a miraculous recovery. Upon her arrival at the hospital, she made a call from the waiting room, and then she escaped. Like, she ran away from the hospital without telling anybody. And she was there specifically to get help for her shortness of breath and her anxiety attacks, but they were also going to be have proof whether or not she'd been attacked or not. She didn't want that to happen, and she didn't get attacked because nothing happened, and she filed a false rape claim, which is horrible, considering that, you know, real people out there are getting sexually assaulted every day, and you're lying about it. Once again, lying about your stepfather dying in a car accident, lying about getting sexually assaulted. It's disgusting. There's no limits. There's no boundaries. There's no end point for her where enough is enough. She was picked up from the hospital by an unknown person and reunited with her daughter Harley miles away from the hospital. The unknown person who picked her up from the hospital, like I said, it says it's unknown in the affidavit, but I have a sense that they probably know who this person is at this point, but everything is sealed. We can't get any more information, so we don't know. Shortly after Letitia reported getting this missing person, even before she had her interview with the police, she's already freaking out. She's already thinking that they suspect her. And she sends a text to one of the investigators on January 28th while they're at her house talking to her daughter, I believe, inside. And it seems she's outside, either the room or the house, when she sends this text. And the text says, what do you want from me? Because I have nothing. One of your very own leaked to me what you guys were doing. I did nothing and or am being set up. I'm not really even sure, other than being told that by another blue with El Paso. I was told I couldn't go home to sleep, and on top of that, men were sent to a home with a minor female, and she was forced to stay there, not to even leave for food. Every conversation that said, even at this moment, I can hear inside, what do you want from me? And then Detective Beth was about to come in to talk to me. I would just like information to find Gannon. So I don't know if Letitia was at her house and investigators were there, or if Letitia was at the police station, like outside, texting from outside. But it's very weird behavior, and this is where she first brings up the fact that she could be being set up. So when a suspect goes from, I didn't do this, completely innocent, to I was set up, you know that there's kind of a transition period there where they're like, okay, there might be enough time.
Looks like our intel was right on the money. Omega Group equipment strewn everywhere.
We're going to fast forward a little bit.
It opened the portals around the
But I
globe.
want to illustrate the
That your assessment, Mr. CIA?
Pretty much. My contact may have gotten himself killed trying to provide additional insight.
So after
Project
Ellen's home on
F-Station
the
was a
28th,
Nazi
right,
experiment
he's
gone
getting
awry.
questions. What happened?
Abandoned
In story 1,
fortified.
she tells him
Soviets
that
found
when
it soon
the
after,
EPSO came
sealed it
to
up.
her house on January
Built a wall
27th,
once
her
we get the
attacker
power
was
on.
still inside, and she tried to signal to the officers that there was an intruder in her house. Now, once again, it should be noted that the deputies entered the house and did a search of the house. It wasn't a thorough search. Like I said, they weren't looking into cars, they weren't opening closets and stuff like that, but they looked in the basement, they looked in the garage, they looked around the house. No intruder. Okay, now we got a second story. She was assaulted by another man, not Eduardo anymore, but a man named Quincy Brown, and this man abducted Gannon. She knew his name because an identification card fell out of his pocket during her assault. And she sent a picture of Quincy Brown to her husband, Al. Quincy Brown is listed online as the most wanted suspect in that area. So basically she just like Googled, criminals in Colorado Springs, and pretty much screenshotted a picture of the first guy that showed up and then sent it to her husband Al and was like, this is the guy that attacked me. Not Eduardo. The Hispanic Eduardo suddenly turned into a black Quincy Brown. I'm not sure how you mistake these two people. And then she only realized it wasn't Eduardo and it was Quincy Brown when his identification card fell out of his pocket. What identification card was it? Was it a work card? Was it a student ID? Was it a driver's license? What was it? What's his address? Where does he live? In story 3, Quincy Brown followed her home from the Petco, and at some point, he was lying in the middle of the road, and in order to not run a man over, she stopped her car. He forced his way into her car and made her drive him to her house, where he assaulted her and then kidnapped again. So once again, stupid story. If a man was lying in the center of the road and I was driving, I would probably stop to avoid running him over. But then I would just either drive around him or stop, lock all the doors of my car, and call the police. Especially when I see him get up and walk towards my car. I'm going to lock my doors at the very least. And she expects us to believe that she sees this guy laying in the middle of the road. She stops. He gets up, walks towards the car, which I'm sure isn't right in front of him. It's probably, a couple feet away. And he's able to get inside of the car and force her to drive him over. And then in the fourth story, T and Gannon were near County Line Road, Highway 105 in northern El Paso County on January 27th. He was riding his bike in that area and fell off, hitting his head. And then he was abducted by Quincy Brown, who was being driven by another man named Terrence. And remember I said in the first video that she doesn't say anything random. It may seem random at first, like he cut his foot and I bandaged it in the garage. But she says nothing random. The fact that she says he was riding his bike in this area and hit his head suggests to me that when she killed him, she hit his head. She hit his head, and she wanted to explain why there may have been blood in his bedroom, and if he was found, it would explain why he had a head wound. Now, on February 16th, Letitia told a female believed to be Tila Cummings that she has been giving Al numerous false stories because she knows he won't believe anything she says. So this is her excuse or her reason, her explanation why she's telling him a bunch of lies and not telling him the truth, because he's not going to believe anything I say anyways. The next day, she told another woman that she was thinking about flying to Colorado to take a lie detector test to prove her innocence, stating they still think I'm in Colorado, or they think I'm still in Colorado. So at this point, she'd already left Colorado and hadn't told the police, even though she's a suspect in a murder. The same day, she told another woman that she is going to take a lie detector test, but no law enforcement official is going to be present at it, and the results won't be admissible in court. She's essentially just taking it to shut up the haters and get her apology. February 17th, the next day, Letitia called a phone number associated with fakepolygraphtest.com. During this call, she's speaking to a male representative, and she says she hasn't gotten her test results yet that she ordered and paid for. She called the number back later and was like, I still haven't gotten these test results, and I got an email saying I'm not going to get them. Why? And this representative told her they have the right to not give her these test results if they feel like the questions she chose to have in this fake polygraph test suggested she might have been a part of an illegal crime. So on fakepolygraph.com, you're able to create the questions that you would be asked and then the responses to them. So you imagine it all, create it all, write it all. And the questions that she had sent to fakepolygraph.com suggested that she might have been involved in a murder. And so they said, we're not going to send you these results. We don't want to be a part of anything illegal. So she asks the guy, what do you do? Just, delete these results and, take the money anyways? And he was like, yep. And she goes, okay, thanks, bye. And she hangs up. So she wants to make sure that they're going to get rid of the evidence that she even tried to get a fake polygraph. But her test continued to the police were able to get a copy of the questions and answers that Letitia had written, and she wanted to be displayed on this fake polygraph test so she could post it on Facebook and maybe even give it to the police or whatever and just try to buy herself some time. Here's the question. Question A. Do you intend to answer these questions regarding your stepson truthfully? And she responds, yes. Question B. Is your birthday August 4th, 1983? She responds, yes. This is the baseline question, right? So trying to get an idea of what your polygraph would look like if you're lying. Question C. Did you participate in any way in causing harm to your stepson? No, is her answer. Question D. Did your stepson return with you to your home? Yes, she answers. Question E. Did you participate in any way in causing the death of your stepson? And she says no. And I expect that it was question E which set fakepolygraph.com off and made them not want to give her gonna be the fourth time I said it. Letitia doesn't do anything random. And question B of this polygraph exam, where she chose the questions and the answers, it says something to me. They are saying in the affidavit that Letitia and Gannon returned home on Monday, January 27th, together. And then she killed him, and then she started cleaning. I don't think that's true. I don't think he did return home with her that day. Like I said, I think she hurt him badly on Sunday, enough to bleed. She beat him because she has a temper. She's a violent person. She beat him. He was bleeding. He cried all night, maybe threatened to tell his parents. She knew at that point that she had to get rid of him, and I believe that's where the blood came from. Because you're not going to kill someone and put them in bed to do it. You're going to want to kill somebody in the easiest place to clean up, where there's going to be a lack of physical evidence. So why would she leave with him on Monday? He was clearly injured. I definitely see that as him going to the car, getting in, clearly injured, limping, walking very slowly, dazed out of it. Why would she take him in the car and drive him to Petco and then drive randomly around somewhere for 2.5 hours, go to Petco again, and then come home? An hour before Lana's going to get home, and that's when she kills him. That's not very good planning when you're carrying out a murder. What I think happened is she hurt him, he was bleeding, she was worried, she drove to Petco so she'd have some kind of alibi, left his phone at home so nobody could trace her. And in that 2-hour period where we don't know where she was, she brought him somewhere, and she killed him out in a place that wasn't her own home, and she could, safely clean up or easily clean up. There's a lot of things pointing to
the Geiger counter's going crazy. Don't know what's over there, but
did your son return home with you before she
I take you away.
Why would that be necessary? What is she trying to prove? Because all of the other questions are lies, right?
Good work, Sir. But you can't leave the job half done.
You hurt your stepson. She says, no. Those are lies. But why would she put a question in there that was the truth, to answer it truthfully? Why would she want police to believe that Gannon came home that day, and that is the scene of the murder? Now they're going to focus more on the house. And if they'd gotten home, at roughly like 2:15, 2:30, and Lana's coming home at 3:15, what did Letitia do? Hey, Gannon, get in bed so I can murder you now? It doesn't make any sense, and even though she's not smart, she's calculated. I don't think a calculated person such as Letitia would have done that. I think when she hurt him on Sunday night, it was a crime of passion. It was not thought through. That's why she did it in his bed, and that's why there was evidence of bleeding in his bed. But at that point, when a day has passed and she's calmed down enough, she's calculated now, she's thinking, okay, how am I going to get away with this? She's not going to tell me to get back in bed. This is just my opinion. I honestly think that Letitia was so concerned about her public appearance, what the public thought about her. She's on Facebook, on all these groups, standing up for herself, telling everybody a different story, taking interviews with people, just talking way too much. I think she wanted this fake polygraph test so she could post it online and show everybody she was innocent. And she did talk to crimeonline.com, who reported that she'd taken and passed the polygraph, but I guess they said it was according to her. But why even report that? The person who's suspected of murder says they took a polygraph and passed, but they have no proof of that, just their word. Why even bother reporting that? It's just very irresponsible journalism. Now let's talk about Letitia's internet search history. Between January 25th and
Raptor 1 in range for
Letitia
extraction.
reviewed sites that were associated with finding jobs in other cities that were not the city she lived in. Such as Los Angeles, Orlando, Florida, Pensacola, Florida, Fort Lauderdale. She also viewed 2-bedroom rentals in Florida and visited a moving cost calculator website. So she was doing this and thinking about moving and getting out of there before Gannon died. In approximately 44% of her Google searches during this time period, T hits the period button instead of the space button, exactly in the same way that was found on the Google search done on Gannon's phone. Can my parent find me if my phone's off? On January 25th, she searched, find real military symbols. Parenting should be 4 people, not 1. I'm overdoing all the work for my stepkids and their mom does at home. Mom advice from stepmom. If you aren't involved in your kid's life, you are shitty. My husband's ex-wife does nothing for her lids. I assume she meant kids. I wonder if my husband's ex-wife is sending me a card since I raised her kids. I wonder if my husband's ex-wife is sending me a Valentine's Day card since I raised her kids. One day, some people will wish they treated you differently. Why should my husband choose me over family? Find me a rich guy who wants me to take care of his kids. Find me a guy who wants me to take care of his kids and get paid. It's crappy some parents don't care for their kids or buy them presents. Parents are those who put their kids before their nails. I think she meant me, but she could have meant males. I mean, Letitia Stock we're talking about, she could have meant males. And before we move on to the Google search results from January 27th, I want to address some of this. Okay, so find real military singles. This woman is married to a man that she basically stole from another woman. She's not happy because Al works a lot, and Landon, the kid's biological mother, is not in the state. I believe he's still in North Carolina. And T is basically feeling that she's the full-time and only parent to Gannon and Lana. A lot of these search results are focused on the
Windows fired.
anger
They'll
she
circle
feels
back
towards Landon, Gannon's mother. Just little petty things like, I wonder if my husband's ex likes sending me Valentine's Day cards as I raise her kids. One day people will wish they treated you differently. Like, the one that sticks out to me the most is, why should my husband choose me over family? Being a step-parent is difficult. It's much harder, I think, than being, a parent to your own children. You are expected to treat children who are not yours by blood as if they were. Because if you're not going to treat these kids like they are yours by blood, and you gave birth to them yourself, you're not right to be a stepmother. You're not right to come into this man's life who has children and be a parent to those children if you're not going to love them like they're your own. And sometimes for some people that's difficult. But she says, why should my husband choose me over family? So she was clearly feeling that Al valued and cared for his children more than he did for her, which is the way it should be, honestly. You should always choose your children over your spouse, especially if it's a step-parent. Now, you don't have to, do that in front of the kids. You should still show a united front in front of the kids. But in the end, these are your children. They are small, they need to be cared for, and they need someone on their side. But Letitia's this kind of selfish, disgusting woman who marries a man that has children and doesn't want to be a mother and wants to be number one in her husband's life. And when you marry a man with kids, you will never be number one in that man's life. You shouldn't be. But that's what she wanted. And she Googled for help online to get reasons of why Al should choose her over his own kids. This shows the amount of resentment she held, not only towards Landon, but also towards Gannon and possibly Lana as well. Alright, Google search results from January 27th. My son burned the carpet. How do I fix it? Will humidifier help if exposed to smoke? Colorado law for kids staying at home. School is out. Is it okay for my kid to stay home alone? Son is sick, but I have to go to work. Son's sick. Can he stay home? Suede repair kit for sofa. El Paso Sheriff Office number. January 27th is the day that Gannon is missing. She's the last person that sees him alive and the day that we believe he's pregnant. January 28th. What is the process for our runaway child? Police steps for our missing child. Today's flight from Oklahoma City to Colorado Springs. Can Nintendo find my Switch? Car, not Volkswagen. They are asking for our son's toothbrush but saying nothing is wrong. Okay. Car, not Volkswagen. What is that? So, is she talking about the car nut that would be in the trunk of her Volkswagen SUV? You know, the one that's in there for holding sports items and things like that so that they're not all over the place? Why is she Googling car nut for Volkswagen? Is that because the car nut that was in her Volkswagen has been thrown out or disposed of for some reason, and she wants to buy a new one to replace it so nobody notices it's missing? Allegedly. They're asking for our son's toothbrush to say nothing's wrong, so now she's starting to realize that because they suspect her. They want his DNA. Why do they want his DNA? They want his DNA to compare it to possible DNA found around the home. Some other searches, though, that's shed some light on the actual dumpster fire that was Letitia Stock's brain. Find me a new husband book. I feel like I'm just a nanny, not a stepmom. Husband used me to babysit his kids. Are there any free money to move away from a bad situation? My husband never posts about me, but does everything else. My husband only cleans up for the army, but not me. I'm just a glorified babysitter. I'm a new husband. Send my husband sexual messages, but he ignores them. Make my husband want me more. I feel like my husband that uses me to babysit his kids. Find a guy without kids. This woman is completely emotionally and mentally immature. She's still in high school. She feels like a nanny, not stepmom. She's just feeling like a glorified babysitter. I hate to break it to you, but
God,
all
Jesus,
parents, okay?
fucking
All
Lord
of us feel like
Almighty.
we're just glorified babysitters. All of us feel like we're just nannies and housekeepers and maids and drivers for our kids. That's it's called being a parent. So it makes me really wonder what her experience was like raising Harley, her own daughter, because I know that she had Harley at a young age, and it seems they have a more friend relationship than mother-daughter relationship. It reminds me of